Okay, I think the theme for tonight was really grandmothers. Yeah, because I got one. Now, my grandma Shirley, if she had something on her mind, she would say it. If she had an opinion, she would be one to express it. I remember at her 80th birthday party on Long Island, New York, where the family's from, and, you know, the family's all there, and my brother John was there with his then girlfriend Jackie, and, you know, we were gathering for the inevitable family picture, and we're about to gather around, and Grandma Shirley, she looks at Jackie with those piercing eyes, and she had this hawk nose, and she looks right at her, and she goes, "Well, are you going to marry him or not? Because if you're not going to marry him, I don't want you in the picture. I don't want to have to erase you later on." Years later, they had detected a lump in her breast, and she was going to have a mastectomy. And my cousin Michael told me the story. He went to visit her, you know, before the surgery, and he goes, "You know, Grandma, you know, just offering my condolences. You know, I'm sorry this is happening." And she looks at him again with the same piercing eyes. She goes, "It doesn't matter. At my age, no one would want to feel me up." That was Grandma. But, you know, one time my brother John talked to her, and she mentioned how she had eloped with her husband, my grandfather. And he told me about that. And we never heard about that. So we went up to New York and asked her to tell us the story. And this is what she told us. Well, it was in the 20s in Brooklyn, New York, and Shirley Lieberman, that was her birth name, and she had she came from a middle-class Jewish family, and at that time, you know, she was 19 and she needed to get a job, and she worked in a shoe factory, and she worked as a secretary. At that same factory worked Angelo Romano. I noticed my name's Romano, so... And anyway, Angelo, he came from a very different family. His family, his parents were Italian immigrants, and they spoke very little English, and they were, like, really poor. I mean, like, they had, like, a 3 or 4 bedroom house with 50 people living in it. And anyway, he was there as would do odd jobs and repair. And I think they had seen each other. That's what she said. Yeah, we noticed each other, but never talked. And one day he went into her office because her office chair wasn't working, and he took out his tools and he fixed it. And he said to her, "There, you know, I fixed it. What do you give me?" And she said, "Oh, well, let's step out in the hall and I'll give you a kiss." And she did. And I think that lit a fire right there. You know, if you think about your grandmother, but, you know, back in those days, I've seen pictures. She was, like, well-built back then. I think the word she would use to describe herself was voluptuous. So it lit a fire there, and they started dating. But, you know, his family, it was crowded, and they didn't speak much English, so they didn't go there. And as for her family, well, she didn't want them to know that she was dating someone who wasn't Jewish. So, like, one time, you know, her mother asked her, you know, "So who's this young man you see?" And she goes, "His name is Harry." "Yeah, Harry." Mother goes, "Oh, Harry, that's like Herschel." That's Harry. Oh, I like that name. Yeah, Herschel. Very nice. So they continued dating because he really liked dating her because he had dated another Italian young woman there. And see, the custom was among the Italians that you would have to have a chaperone. But dating Shirley, no chaperone. She says, "Yeah, so one time I was, you know, outside of work, this woman comes up to me, and, you know, it was the woman that Angela was dating, and she goes, 'You're stealing my man away! You're taking my man away from her!'" But they continued dating. And so anyway, as she told me, and my brother John, when she told the story, she goes, "Well, it was getting pretty hot, and you got married first." But she said, "Well, you know, what are we going to do? You can't, you know, my parents will never approve, and your parents, you know, can we just speak to them?" And she goes, "Well, you know, maybe we can, you know, maybe we should just meet one night." and just go to my house. Well, she goes home, and, her mother must have been suspicious. She goes, so, Shirley, Harry, he is Jewish, isn't he? She goes, well, no, Mom, he's not Jewish. As a matter of fact, his name ain't Harry either. It's Angelo Romano. And her mother's jaw, she said, just dropped them. Angelo Romano? You mean he's Italian? Don't you know they're all gangsters? He's got a stiletto under his pillow. He'll kill you. He'll hurt you. Because, no, he's really very nice. But, no, her mother would not be assuaged. So they decided to go through with this plan. And, on the night that they decided, it was a summer night there in Brooklyn, New York. And Shirley, she just went and she got a few clothes, and stuck them in a bag. And she dropped them out of her bedroom window into the alley beside the house. Nonchalantly goes to the door. Her mother is waiting there. She knows. She's trying to stop me from going. But she was patient. She waited and waited, and finally her mother, Gussie Lieberman was her name, left. And Shirley just walked out. And she met Angelo at the prearranged place. And, he said, I thought you weren't coming. She goes, my mother, she always tries to ruin everything. And they looked at each other. We're together. And their eyes glowed, I'm sure, just like the gas lights that were glowing along the street. And then they went to Angelo's house. But there was a problem there. He had not told his family anything about it. And when he brought her in and told them in Italian what the plans were, suddenly the whole family was there. Oh, there was a ruckus, and they were yelling and shouting, and hands and arms were flying and going on, all in Italian. And you remember the old joke about how do you stop an Italian from talking? Tie up his hands. It went on, and Shirley couldn't understand a word of it, and she just thought, this doesn't look good. And finally, Angelo's mother, Raffaella Romano, she comes up, she knew a bit of English, she goes, Angelo! She looked at Shirley, why couldn't you find a nice Italian girl? And Angelo says, Mother, this is the woman I want to be with. This is the woman I love. She goes, all right, but she can't stay here. She's got to stay next door with Aunt Annie until you two are married. They're, of course, a Catholic family. So Shirley was trundled off next door, where she had to stay with one of Angelo's young female cousins. She had to share a bed with this cousin until they were married, which they did in short order, believe me, within a week. And so they're married, and Shirley lived with the Romanos, who accepted her as a daughter. Meanwhile, her parents were not pleased. And as a matter of fact, one Sunday afternoon, she told us, they came, her mother, Gussie Lieberman, and her father, Louis Lieberman, and knocked on the door. And they opened up the door, and Shirley was aghast. There they are. She goes, they're going to ruin my in-laws' dinner. And they come in, and Gussie, Shirley's mother, starts talking to Angelo. And she goes, why do you want to be with her? She's a Jew. You want to be with a Jew? And he goes, what did he say? He goes, you can't provide for her. We can let her come back with us. We'll give her anything she wants, a car, anything. And Angelo was like, she's right there. Why don't you talk to her? And Shirley was probably one of those few times in her life when she was dumbstruck. And what could she say? She said, all she could think of, they're ruining my in-laws' dinner. Louis Lieberman, her father, just walked over to Angelo and took his hand and shook it. He said, just take good care of my baby. He said, I will, sir. Well, every Sunday after that, there would Gussie, she would come, trying to change Shirley's mind. And as I say, she would bring her own food. I guess she wanted to keep kosher or didn't want to impose on them. She would eat there while they were eating and try to convince Shirley to come back, but she never did. And that's how they started their life together. And, my grandmother told us, me and John, this story, and we sat there. We were just amazed. I mean, we had never heard this before. No one had ever told us this story before. And, it's really hard to think of, your grandmother as young and vibrant and horny. There it was. And after she was done with the story, she said, well, I wish I had a more interesting life to tell you about. And it was one of the few times I ever heard her show some humility. And that's the end of that story. Thank you very much.